When Cher speaks, the world listens. But this time, her voice trembled with something rare: grief, memory, and a quiet reverence for a man few truly understood. Leon Russell. To most, he was the mysterious genius behind the piano, the man in the top hat who drifted through rock's golden age like a ghost. But to Cher, he was something else, a quiet soul with laughter buried deep beneath silence, a man whose genius came with pain few could imagine. And now, decades later, she finally tells the story she's kept to herself for years. The quiet genius nobody knew. Leon Russell was never the kind to shout for attention. Born Claude Russell Bridges on April 2, 1942, in Lawton, Oklahoma, he entered the world already facing obstacles. An injury at birth damaged the second and third vertebrae in his spine, leaving him with a mild form of cerebral palsy. 3 fingers on his right hand never worked properly, forcing him to depend on his left. That limitation, which might have crushed another musician's dreams, became the foundation of his genius. "My chops have always been weak," he once admitted, but weakness didn't stop him. It defined him. His mother used to say Leon didn't speak until late in childhood. And when he finally did, his first words stunned her. "What's the matter, little birdie?" you cry. It wasn't just that he could speak. It was the way he saw the world, already through the eyes of a poet. As a boy, Leon found comfort in music. At just 4 years old, he sat down at the family piano and played the hymn "Trust and Obey" by ear. His parents watched in disbelief. By 10, he was making a 38-mile trip for piano lessons, then learning saxophone, cornet, and baritone horn. By the 5th grade, he'd joined the high school marching band. Music was not a hobby. It was survival. For nearly 10 years, Leon studied classical piano, but his damaged hand made it impossible to play the way others did. Instead of quitting, he invented new techniques, faking classical phrasing, turning limitations into style. "Music saved me," he once said. "Without it, I'd probably be an ex-football player selling insurance in some small town." At 15, Leon recorded his first song, "Joe Baby," with his classmate David Gates, who would later form the band Bread. By then, he was already sneaking into clubs in Tulsa with a fake ID, performing under the name Leon Russell. The name stuck. He'd finish gigs at 3 a.m., then drag himself to school by morning. "I slept through English a lot," he joked, but he didn't care. He had found his way out, through sound. When Jerry Lee Lewis invited him on tour after high school, Leon didn't hesitate. He dropped out of college and hit the road. "I figured this was my chance to eat in a lot of restaurants," he said dryly. But what awaited him wasn't glamour. It was struggle. Los Angeles in the late 1950s was harsh on young musicians. Clubs were scarce, work was rare, and Leon often went hungry. Still, he refused to give up. Mad Dogs, Englishmen, and the birth of a legend. By 1970, Leon Russell was done playing in the shadows. His quiet brilliance had caught the attention of a desperate man, Joe Cocker. The British soul singer was a post-Woodstock star on the verge of collapse, burned out, erratic, and facing deportation from the U.S. unless he launched an immediate tour. The problem? He had no band, no plan, and 1 week to make it happen. That's when he called Leon. Russell stepped in and built chaos into order. In just days, he auditioned dozens of musicians and assembled what became the infamous Mad Dogs and Englishmen tour. 48 days of exhaustion, fire, and genius. He recruited members from Delaney and Bonnie Bramlett's band and formed a 10-voice gospel space choir. The lineup was wild and unpredictable, but alive. In truth, it wasn't Cocker's band anymore. It was Leon's. Joe was too lost in the haze to lead. When Leon asked, "Does it sound right to you?" Cocker muttered, "It never sounds right to me." Leon simply decided, "Then I'll do whatever I want." Dressed in a top hat and basketball jersey, he took command of the stage like a Southern preacher crossed with a rock outlaw. Singer Claudia Lanier later said Leon had a gift for blending white gospel with black gospel, creating a sound no one else could. When Elton John saw the concert film, he said what everyone knew. Joe was amazing, but it was Leon's band. Leon's leadership was total. He arranged, directed, played, and sang with magnetic force. Off stage, he barely spoke. On stage, he became a storm. And even as he carried the tour, he was quietly recording his self-titled debut album, featuring Bob Dylan, George Harrison, Eric Clapton, and Mick Jagger. From that record came two songs that defined his legacy, Delta Lady and A Song for You. They weren't just hits. They were confessions, pieces of Leon's soul set to melody, the concert for Bangladesh, and the many faces of Leon. By the early 1970s, Leon Russell had become the invisible glue of rock music, producing, arranging, and performing for everyone who mattered. His fingerprints were everywhere, yet fame came with fatigue. In 1971, George Harrison called with a life-changing invitation. "I need you in New York." Harrison was assembling the concert for Bangladesh, the first great rock charity show. Bob Dylan, Eric Clapton, Ringo Starr, and Billy Preston were all on stage, and right in the middle was Leon Russell. He played piano, bass, and sang backup, but when he broke into a medley of Jumpin' Jack Flash and Young Blood, the crowd, and even the stars beside him, knew who owned the moment. When the live album won the 1973 Grammy for Album of the Year, Leon's impact was undeniable. That same year, he released Leon Russell and the Shelter People, his first gold album, a wild mix of gospel, country, and blues that critics struggled to label. He didn't fit any genre because he was the genre. Then came his alter ego, Hank Wilson. Born from a sleepless road trip and truck stop tapes, Hank was Leon's country twin, a cowboy voice that let him laugh, breathe, and hide. His 1973 album, Hank Wilson's Back Volume. One turned into an unexpected hit, with Roll in My Sweet Baby's Arms introducing him to new fans far from the rock scene. He kept creating, transforming an old church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, into the church studio, a haven for artists like Willie Nelson, Freddie King, and Eric Clapton. The building pulsed with music day and night, a living monument to Leon's restless spirit. But he couldn't sit still. In 1974, he produced blues albums for Freddie King and reluctantly agreed to a documentary. A Poem is a Naked Person. It captured him too honestly, and he hated it, keeping it locked away for 40 years. By then, Leon had everything: success, respect, and his own creative empire. But behind his calm voice and sharp eyes, the restlessness never stopped. The road, the reinvention, and the fall. By the late 1970s, Leon Russell had worn every mask. Producer, songwriter, performer, recluse. Fame brought him money, but not peace. The more he achieved, the more he withdrew from the world that once inspired him. Music was shifting fast. Disco ruled the charts, and the raw, soulful sound Leon loved was fading. He tried to adapt, but his gospel blues roots didn't fit the glossy 1980s. Still, he kept touring, his voice rougher, his hair longer, his shows more unfiltered than ever. In 1979, Leon married Mary McCreary, a gospel singer who had worked with him before. Their wedding album mixed love and spirituality, but the marriage soon crumbled under exhaustion and the pressures of life on the road. By the early 1980s, Leon's crowds had thinned. Stadiums became small theaters, and superstardom gave way to survival. Yet he played with the same fire, like at Joe Ely's Tornado Jam in 1982, performing before 25,000 fans beside Joan Jett and the Crickets. The passion never left him, even when the spotlight did. He released Hank Wilson Volume 2 in 1984, returning to his country roots, followed by Solid State, a blues album recorded in Tennessee. Critics barely noticed. The man who once shared stages with Dylan and Harrison was now fighting to be heard. By 1985, he released Best of Leon Russell, A Song for You, a quiet reflection on a long, bruised career. That same year, he toured with Edgar Winter, their contrast of chaos and calm rekindling some of Leon's old spark. Through the late 80s, Leon became the ghost of another era, still touring, still playing, long after fame had moved on. His audience was smaller, older, but faithful. For them and for himself, he kept the music alive. The forgotten years and the long road back. The 1990s arrived quietly, and so did Leon Russell. Once a stadium headliner, he now drifted through the music world like a ghost. But Leon didn't chase fame anymore. He only cared about playing. In 1991, he released Anything Can Happen with Bruce Hornsby, his first album in nearly a decade, a gentle mix of reflection, faith, and regret. Critics praised it, but sales were modest. Leon didn't mind. He'd become a monument of American music, even if the world had moved on to new sounds. By the mid-1990s, he lived simply. He founded his own label and recorded hymns of Christmas, soft, instrumental, and spiritual. It wasn't made for charts, but for peace. Yet his health began to fail. The childhood injury that shaped his playing returned, turning every note into pain. In 1998, he revived his alter ego for Legend in My Time, Hank Wilson Volume 3, a nostalgic look back at the country roots that had once healed him. It was full of tenderness, the sound of a man still searching for simplicity. Through the 2000s, Leon remained a cult hero. Younger artists like Elton John, Willie Nelson, and T-Bone Burnett revered him as proof that real art never dies. He toured small venues, moving slower now, but still radiating quiet power. "I don't need much," he said, "just a piano and somebody listening." By 2009, his health collapsed. Brain surgery, heart failure, exhaustion. Doctors told him to stop. "If I stop playing," he said, "I'll die faster." Then came a call from Elton John. "You were my idol," Elton told him. "Let's make a record together." That record, The Union, was both reunion and rebirth. Produced by Burnett, it returned Leon to the spotlight. His voice was rough, his hands weak, but his soul blazed again. When Elton called him the greatest piano player alive, Leon only smiled. He didn't have to say a word. Cher's memory, the final years, and the silence that remains. By the 2000s, Leon Russell had lived several lifetimes inside one body. He had gone from a shy boy in Oklahoma with damaged fingers to one of the most respected musicians in the world. And now he was simply tired. The fame, the music, the road, it had all taken its toll. Still, he refused to stop. Even after major surgery and years of heart problems, Leon continued to tour. He performed sitting down, his long white hair draped over his shoulders, his fingers trembling over the piano keys that had defined his life. Every note carried the weight of decades, loss, faith, redemption. His voice cracked, but it was honest. "You can't fake pain," he said once. "The audience knows." In 2011, the world finally gave Leon the recognition he had earned long ago. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame by Elton John himself, who broke down in tears during his speech. "He was my mentor," Elton said. "Without him, I wouldn't be here." Leon, humble as always, simply replied, "Thank you for remembering me." But the years that followed were a slow decline. The man who had once defined energy and innovation now struggled just to keep up with his own heartbeat. Still, he recorded when he could. He performed when he was strong enough, because music was not his job, it was his oxygen. Then came November 13th, 2016. Leon Russell died in his sleep at his home in Nashville, Tennessee, at 74 years old, from complications of heart disease. He left behind his wife, Jan Bridges, 6 children, and a catalog of songs that had touched millions. His funeral was held in Tulsa, and fans lined the streets with flowers, hats, and handwritten notes. The piano, his lifelong companion, sat silent for the first time. For most, Leon's story might have ended there, but for Cher, it didn't. In a reunion interview years later, Cher, the eternal queen of pop, finally spoke about Leon Russell, the man she had known in the studio decades before. "Leon never said boo to anybody," she recalled. "He'd just come in, play his piano, and leave." Then she laughed softly, remembering one day when everything changed. One time he came in, completely drunk. I mean, so drunk. Everyone was staring because Leon never talked. But that day, he wouldn't stop talking. He was so funny, so alive. As Cher told it, the session leader, Philip, tried to rein things in and said, "Leon, have you ever heard the word respect?" Leon didn't hesitate. He jumped on the piano and shouted back, "Philip, have you ever heard the word?" and let the room explode into laughter. "We were on the floor crying," Cher said, shaking her head. "It took half an hour to stop laughing." Behind her laughter, though, there was something else. Tenderness. She spoke of him not just as a musician, but as a soul she'd never forgotten. He was quiet, but when he played, you could hear everything he never said. Others remembered him, too. Trombonist Lou McCreary recalled Leon's early days, living in a rundown motel on Sunset Boulevard, without a phone, chasing work one studio at a time. Guitarist Tommy Tedesco remembered the moment Leon froze during a session with Glenn Campbell, unsure of himself, until Campbell whispered, "Play what you did in Oklahoma. They don't know anything here." Leon played, and from that moment, his sound became legend. Drummer Hal Blaine said Leon's touch was magic, like home and heaven at the same time. Sound engineer Larry Levine remembered his impossible reach, hands that could stretch octaves like they weren't even there. And then there was the story that seemed to capture him best, told by Julius Retcher, who once watched Leon walk into a studio late, limping, silent. The room was full, the tension thick. The conductor barked, "Leon, don't you ever be late again." Leon said nothing. He closed the piano, stood up, and limped out. The room fell silent. He didn't need to argue. He just walked away. That was Leon Russell, defiant, wounded, and free. In the years since his death, his legend has only grown. Younger generations discover his songs and wonder how one man could blend so many worlds, rock, gospel, blues, country, into something that felt eternal. Cher's voice still softens when she speaks his name. "There was something about Leon," she said quietly. "He moved to his own beat, even when it hurt him. That's why you never forget him. Leon Russell may be gone, but his voice still lives in every piano note, every soul song, every whisper from those who knew him." What's your favorite memory or song from Leon's incredible career? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about the legends who shaped music forever.